Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Zareth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. Today is kind of an exciting match because it's a finals episode, which means that I've won my two previous matches, and my opponent has won their two previous matches, and so we're the only two undefeateds in our group. And even though each win kind of contributes the exact same amount to your total prizes and everything, it's just got a little more tension in each finals round. So this is our second round of the current Grand Arena Championships, which means we have two more total rounds or 6 matches left. I've already lost one match in the finals last time, so I guess we can see if I can redeem myself. I mean, that was really my push here. I really wanted to make sure that I could, see if I could win this one. Not just because I want to get a win, but losing 2 finals in a row is awful, and it's not something I will ever want to do. Even though I did it last championships, I think I lost the 2 medal finals. I was still able to make Kyber, so I guess that cured all. But let's move on to the match. So my opponent did not completely overwhelm me as in terms of stats. They had a little bit better mods than me, as I've come to expect. Everyone's got better mods. Even though I invest a lot into mods, I don't know if my RNG is just not as good, or if at my level, like most people have spent like actual money to try to get better mods or what. But for whatever reason, I don't necessarily have better mods. I do have better, faster mods on, my Darth Revan. My opponent did have a faster Bastila, which seems to be like kind of a theme for this current Grand Arena Championships. A lot of people have had faster Bastilas, so I wasn't sure what people would do. In the past, people have had faster Bastilas and then they've like put them in other squads and stuff, so I don't really know exactly what people are going to be doing. But when I first got to this match, my opponent had already attacked and cleared my first row with no fails, which was okay because they had dropped 9 banners, which meant that they weren't necessarily being the most efficient. And they had not put very many strong squads up front, just kind of the standard ones that you expect to see. I didn't see any Darth Revans or anything, but they did have a lot of really great speed on all these teams, and so I decided right off the bat that I would just try to take out the Jango team with my super extremely fast hyper speed Stark team. And if you haven't been following this, I've gotten my speed up on Stark up to 320 base, which means that he's at 340 with the Veer's lead, and that generally means that I'm going to be going first in almost any of my matches. The really awesome thing about Jango teams is, he has plus 30 speed, which means that people have like these supersonic Bosks that go first. And my opponent's Bosk was like at 317 speed, 319, something like that, after the leadership. So I still outsped him by about 21 speed or so. But that's all you really need with troopers. You just pick one, the one with the weakest health, and you take him out. It feeds turn meter to the entire squad, and as people are getting buffs and as people are getting stronger, the turn meter train just rolls, and the bounty hunters don't even get one turn. So not a really hard match if you've done your modding correctly. You've got to do it in advance, though. You can't just kind of wing it. And if you have slower Imperial Troopers, then you don't really have the option to use that as a counter. So just so you're aware. Now, the other squad in this zone is the Old Republic team that we keep seeing, and I specifically geared and Zetaed my entire Phoenix team to be a counter specifically to this team. I also wanted to something that I'd be able to take into First Order if I needed to, though so far that hasn't really proven necessary. Now, the very first thing you'll note is that even though I had Sabine able to go first with her grenades, I put Armor Shred on Zalbar, and this was actually one of the strongest Carth squads I'd ever faced. They had all of them had really fast mods. They had a lot of really strong offense mods as well, potency. They had all of the right stats on them, so I wasn't going to take this encounter lightly, and You want to start stacking the armor shred as quickly as you can. Honestly, just because Zalbar is so hard to take out, and his armor is so ridiculous, and he stacks defense. He does a lot of things that make it really hard to take him out. And as you may or may not know, Phoenix is not necessarily like a paragon of offense. They don't, they're not really capable of doing a huge amount of damage all in one time. They can all counter, they do certain things well, but they kind of just have to work together, which is, I guess, kind of a triumph for the dev team, just because the Phoenix squad is supposedly really good at teamwork in the show, and they are, I guess, if we're fair. So one thing that I will note is that I messed up with Chopper a few moves ago, and I dispelled Zalbar instead, which meant I had to attack Juhani after that. I think I just didn't see the Juhani taunt was up, in which case I would be able to get a few hits in on Carth or Canderous, but as it stands, I mean, frankly, it's probably always going to be better just to be hitting Zalbar, unless he's got his counter up, which he does right now. You know, then it's not as good, because they're doing all these crazy assists, missions hitting, then Canderous goes, and you can see that the dots are really stacking up on Kanan. It's kind of scary looking. And I've done almost no damage to these guys. I mean, it's been almost half of the clock. I've done almost no damage, and it's looking kind of tense. Like, I wasn't feeling the greatest about my chances here. This, like I said, this was my strongest Old Republic team yet, and I really needed to make sure that I wasn't going to fail any attacks, but I just wasn't sure if that was even possible. So I decided, well, not decided, I kept going. I needed to keep hitting them for everything I had, you know, keep piling on armor shred, and if I could just topple Zalbar and take him out, then I was going to be doing a lot better. And you see, after all these armor shreds, I was able to take Zalbar out, and then immediately Carth was taken out. So I was feeling a lot better about things. This match can be really tense, though. I mean, I think it's kind of nuts how Zalbar went from, like, almost full health to nothing, just because of all that armor shred on there. That's really the only reason that works. So keep that in mind. Plus, Zeb actually does a lot of damage after he is Zeta'd. His special can do a huge amount. You know, it doesn't always work out the way you want it to, but he does a lot of damage. So after I took out those two, the rest of these guys were just kind of hanging on. Like, Juhani was being disruptive, Canderous was getting a ton of assists, and you know, Mission was stealthing. All of this stuff was contributing to a pretty low clock. Like, it wasn't. It was causing me a little bit of stress, and you'll see in the final minutes, I was just kind of mashing buttons, hoping that I would be able to, you know, not only take out this team, but you want to get as many banners as you can. And so, you know, there are a couple moves here where I just went on, you know, defense. I was trying to buy turns for Kanan. I wasn't quite panicking, but I was, like, just kind of pushing them as fast as I could, just to make sure that I could get this win. I was still fairly confident that I'd take out this team, but you just never know. And I did end up taking them out in time, and 59 banners is very acceptable for this match, especially because my opponent had leveled or geared up his guys so well and put so many strong mods on them. So I was really happy that I was able to take that squad out, of course. And in the back zone was General Grievous and First Order, which is good news, especially because the Grievous team only has one Gear 13 guy. I needed to make sure what was in that next zone, of course, but I was feeling fairly confident. Now, I'm going to take a moment to be uncharitable to my opponent, because they refused to talk to me throughout the entire match. I tried to communicate with them. They didn't want to talk, and that's fine. That's their prerogative, but that also means that I don't necessarily have any reason to not hold back. And really, the thing I wanted to point out was, I wonder how my opponent would feel to know that I had taken this entire zone out with only Imperial Troopers and Phoenix. That's not a great feeling, is my assumption, but who knows? Maybe they would enjoy that news, and I don't know. Let's hope not. So I needed to clear the next zone, to make sure that I had the complete knowledge of what I was facing here. So my opponent hadn't really put any challenging teams up front. This wasn't really a difficult decision. And you guys have seen this match a million times. Like, First Order really does well against this Qi'ra Scoundrels team. Even with Nest in it, it's not really a problem. The biggest problem is, honestly, like, you want to try to max out your banners, your protection, and doing that requires time. It requires effort, and you're going to end up, if you do it right, you want to kill Vander first, so then there's no revives, and then after that, you want to take out the rest of the team, maybe stun Nest along the way, just try to control what she's doing. You see that I used Executioner there to just give her a hit, just so her protection would take a hit. Then next time she'd have a turn, I'd be able to keep working on that protection. So trying to take out the other tanks can take a while. My opponent hadn't necessarily modded their guys like super well. I mean, they were modded like tanks. They were modded fine, but they weren't necessarily like crazy top end mods kind of thing. And you'll see that I stunned L3 there instead of Nest, just because the second I stunned Nest and then I hit L3 would just dispel that buff on Nest, and that wouldn't really necessarily serve my purposes very well. So I instead took out L3. Maybe I should have stunned someone else. It doesn't really matter. Like, that stun was probably just something I did that maybe I should have just held on to it, and that's not really something I ever do, which I don't know why. Now that I'm talking about it, I'm not sure why I don't hold on to that taunt, or that stun. It's a really good tactical thing to be able to hold in reserve. But anyways, you can see Nest is already alone. I had well over 3 minutes at the time that she was isolated. And so all I'm trying to do here is maximize my protection. You can stun Nest, and you have the luxury with First Order, once she's just alone, you can kind of just take your time, because you can double stun her, and then, as she has tenacity down, you have a ton of ways to kind of reduce her turn meter, and so you can make it so you can engineer it so that she can never really take a turn if you don't want her to, and then you can just do all these things. And the only way you can regenerate First Order officers protection, he's the hardest one, because he can target someone and give them buffs, which gives them protection up, or rather heals their protection. With him, he can't do that to himself, and so I keep giving his buff to I keep giving turn meter to First Order Stormtrooper, so the Stormtrooper can cycle through his different turns and be able to give the debuff or the taunt, which in turn buffs the rest of the team and regenerates some more protection by First Order officer. So really, I mean, that's the whole thing that I'm doing here. It takes a while, but you can see now they've all got their full protection and health, and now that Nest is stunned and everything, now I'm just using basics to wait until Nest's turn goes up, and now you can see her turn did go up, her protection evaporated, and I was able to just take her out. So not a challenging fight here. The question is always just, am I going to get like 59 banners, or am I going to get 60? So just something to keep in mind if you're running into those guys. Like, you could really, if you can hustle at the start and take out all the characters that are blocking the way from Nest, First Order is a great option to be able to get full banners against a Qi'ra Nest team. The final squad here is not necessarily super challenging. They were Nightsisters. They were well modded. They were strong. My opponent clearly knew what they were doing with their Nightsisters when they were putting them together, but unfortunately for them, I had Padme, and Padme didn't necessarily have a specific purpose other than trying to take out Nightsisters. Like, I've just kind of reserved Padme, for now at least, as the squad that takes out Nightsisters. I'm wondering if once I get my clones fully up and running, if they're going to be as good of an option, so then Padme can do something else, like maybe even sit on defense or something. But you guys have seen this match a million times for me. It is a little bit new just because I have Barriss here instead of C-3PO, and Barriss is not as good as C-3PO, frankly. Like, she's fine. She's like an A- compared to C-3PO's A or A+, whatever you want to give him. I kind of hesitate to give him anything good because I kind of hate his character. But otherwise, like, Barriss, frankly, isn't much better character-wise. She's lore-wise, I'm not a huge fan, but she does just fine here. It is nice. One thing I've noticed with Barriss is that if she can build enough courage up, she can just one-shot characters every once in a while, which is nice, of course. C-3PO can just build up an infinite stack of courage and never be able to use it. So it is nice to actually have that fifth character actually able to do something. I think I do prefer 3PO overall in this match, but it's really not that big of a deal. So you can see that I wasted my Ahsoka ability there on Spirit, and that still didn't matter. 57 banners is fine. Really, I mean, 55 banners, 55 to 60 is just what you expect against Nightsisters. I don't know what happened so that they didn't hit two of my guys and take their protection out, but I suppose I'll take it. So here's something really interesting. My opponent actually put Darth Revan in their back zone. That's the first time I've ever seen that. That's not something I'm accustomed to seeing, and so I was excited that I kept my Darth Revan in reserve, but frankly, my opponent hadn't really put that many things in on defense in the first row, and so I didn't really have any choices. Like, there wasn't a squad I was like, oh man, I really wish I could use Revan here. You know, if they put like their General Grievous team up front, maybe. But as it stood, they did have their Revan squad there. I needed to take it out. And an interesting facet to this match was that my Bastila was slower than theirs, and so I had to kind of figure out my strategy. And I decided that I would still just kind of go with the same strategy I have gone with. Because my Darth Revan is faster, all I needed to do really was hit their Darth Revan, and because they didn't have any taunters there, I was able to put fear on the whole team, and then I got lucky a little bit. Bastila did not get the Dark Battle Meditation on her, so she was able to debuff everyone, and from there, I mean, everything just kind of went downhill for them. I mean, if she had gotten Dark Battle Meditation, I don't see this battle going much differently. Maybe I would have had to go a couple extra turns and lost a couple banners, but on the other hand, I might have been able to regenerate those banners. You just never know. But as it stood, that was really the only other team that I was very afraid of, that I felt super wary of, so I was happy with that set of circumstances. In a way, I was a little disappointed that my opponent had put Geos in the back there, just because my Traya team has been having a lot of fun taking out other teams. Like, they're kind of a hard counter for clones. They take out Padme really well, and of course they beat Geos really well, but that's kind of a boring solution. That's kind of a known entity at this point, and so I mean, that was still probably the best option. I had Commander Luke available to take these guys out, but last time I did that, I lost Chewbacca, and it was like real close, and it's never been very close for me when I've taken Traya. Also, the Commander Luke team would really like to have all 5 characters, and this was an opportunity for me to get an understrength win. And so, I mean, that's really what my focus is here, is trying to get as many banners as I can, but then that includes trying to get all the undersized wins that you can, so you can earn that feat eventually. And really, here in this match, I decided to take 4 guys just out of insurance. I guess I probably could have gone with 3, but really they were hitting hard enough. Like, Scion is on the edge of dead here, so I don't necessarily regret taking 4. Taking 5 I think would have been a waste for the reasons I've kind of outlined before, but I mean, 57 banners, that's not obviously it's not perfect, but it was also risk-free. There was no chance of me losing that, really. And so I took that zone out. There was only two teams left, and Grievous is obviously a really strong threat. My opponent's Grievous team, they had Grievous modded extremely well, like almost 120k health, which is a huge amount of damage, but then otherwise the rest of them were not necessarily fully functional. Like Newt was only gear 11, for instance, and even though gear 12 doesn't necessarily make him a ton more resilient, it's just kind of a statement on my opponent's part of how much they valued this team. They clearly hadn't put a huge amount of work into it. They put more work into other things. And so I was able to take Bastila here as lead again. And I really like using that against the Grievous squads. I think Jedi Knight Revan is also just fine into them, but I like all the extra bonus protection at the very start that you get with Bastila. And then one revelation that I've noticed is putting Hermit Yoda in with that squad has really helped, just because he heals protection, and he heals every turn. He heals health and protection. He gives everyone foresight. He does just a lot of really good things. And the Revan squad, of course, wants more DPS, but Hermit Yoda does hand that out pretty well. I mean, he gives a huge amount of damage just in the form of Grandmaster Yoda. Once he trains himself, Grandmaster Yoda then becomes like kind of an engine of destruction, and he's just doing all kinds of crazy damage, and he's assisting so much and taking so many turns that in a way it's like having Hermit Yoda actually directly contributing to the combat. So you'll see that I took a turn out of like hitting other droids, and I used Grandmaster Yoda and his special to reduce the turn meter on General Grievous. And the point of that is just to limit how many turns General Grievous gets to take. You're going to kill a droid, and then he's going to do his crazy AoE, but every turn he takes, he gets stronger. And so if you can just limit his turns to like retribution turns where you kill one of his droids and then he hits you back for it, if you can limit his turns to that, that's going to be ideal. That doesn't always happen, but that's kind of something to shoot for. And you can see here I'm thinking about that exact thing. I'm thinking about maybe trying to take out Newt in order to kind of force General Grievous's turn meter, but I apparently just had Jolie send Yoda in to assist against Grievous, so maybe not the best decision making I had. I'm not really sure, but the goal here obviously is just to win with as much protection as you can, and so I think I'm just trying to manipulate the system so that I could take both Newt and B1 out at the same time, which I did. So Grievous only takes one bonus turn if you use an AoE, and then Great Grievous goes right after that. You killed 2 tunes, and Grievous doesn't like take 2 bonus turns. He gets all of his turn meter activated right away for the one. So if you can manipulate it to go that well, that's awesome. It doesn't always work as well as it did in this circumstance, but it obviously worked well enough. Like Grievous is right on the edge here of being taken out, and we're doing well. It was kind of disappointing that I took out Newt there with my AoE. I think I was assuming that I wouldn't take him out, but he's gear 11. I should have actually taken that into consideration. Like, maybe a gear 11 Newt is actually better on a Grievous team. I don't really know. I know that my alt runs like a gear 9 Newt, and he always dies right away, and then he comes back and he's stealthed, and Grievous just gets an automatic AoE right off the bat. So not necessarily a bad strategy. I don't know, not necessarily my favorite either, I guess. And so my final match here was First Order, and I knew the First Order they're a relatively strong squad here, but I did have Jedi Training Rey, which I get max banners for every time, but I need a full squad with Jedi Training Rey to be able to do that, so I decided to take Commander Luke. I took L3, and even though taking L3 meant that I was going to probably concede one banner by her missing some of her protection. I figured that was okay. I'd still get the same number of banners as I would have with Jedi Training Rey, but I'd also get an understrength win. And honestly, I've really been enjoying my current attack scheme. When I face similar teams, at least, I'm able to clear pretty efficiently. Like, having Jedi Training Rey not used at all is perhaps not ideal, but at the same time, like, I used Phoenix to be able to take out a team. I used Imperial Troopers to be able to take out a team, and so there's not a whole lot of leeway. Like, if my opponent had gone really hard on defense, I don't know if I could even get a full clear. I have yet to see a defense that was just like completely insane. I mostly fully clear my opponents. I think maybe there was like one time that I haven't done that. So in general though, like if you can beat their Jedi or their Darth Revan team, that's obviously important. And then after that, you know, you can mostly fully clear. People use the same principle that I do in terms of like I just try to make sure that I'm going to full clear my opponents, and so they do the same because everyone wants all those extra banners and everything. But anyways, I still just haven't seen an all-out defense team yet. So 60 banners here, pretty good result. And in the end, I wasn't really sure. Like, I'm always shooting for trying to get like 1910 is kind of the number that I'm looking for, the score, and 1908 is still solid, but it's like if my opponent clears me a little more efficiently, then it's going to potentially go poorly for me. Like right now, if they have to drop 4 banners and they lose, so they have to full clear me and all my hardest teams there, and only drop 4 banners. And I still had my full Gear 13 Nightsisters, my General Grievous, Jango, Bounty Hunters, and Shakti. And so when I got back, all of my characters fell over. They had been slain with no defense, but my opponent had dropped 7 more banners, or 8 rather, and I was able to take the win. And that's obviously the result we want. I was able to win by 5 banners. I was a little disappointed I didn't get any defends there at the end, but I mean, a win is a win, and I'm happy with it. I ended up clearing my opponent pretty efficiently, I feel like, and they were a finalist, and so that means that they were able to do pretty well on defense and offense in other matches, presumably, so I'm happy with the win. And we are still in the running for Kyber League, so I'm really excited for that. That's going to be fantastic if we can make it, and we have one more week without relics, and I'm always looking forward to a week without relics, so that will be great. And otherwise, I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you so much, and remember that in all things, Zareth prevails.